Well, hello there and happy Thursday, and welcome to this week's edition of Your Daily Dose. So, today we're going to talk about lying to your loved one with dementia. This is pretty controversial. Some people say, oh, I would never lie to my loved one. I should never lie to my loved one. And there's other people who are like, oh, yes, for sure. I would definitely lie to my loved one with dementia if it helped them. So I'm going to tell you a story that just recently happened. So I went into a patient's room just like this. I had my laptop in hand, I had my bag in hand, and I had everything ready to go to see this young lady for her first visit. When I walked into her room, I said, hi, my name is Laura Wilkerson, and I'm with, my company, and I'm here to see you. And she turned and looked at me and she said, get out. You get out of here right now. I don't want to be here. I have no desire to be here. My daughters put me here. I don't care who you are, Laura. You need to leave. I need to speak to my son, Brad. He's the only one who cares about me. Now you just get right out. So I thought, okay, well, this is going well so far. I need to take an intake. I need to take a history. I need to find out her medical history. How am I going to do this and how am I going to approach her? She's already defensive. She's already angry. She wants her son, Brad. A little while later, she said, I just want to go home. My parents are expecting me. I don't know why you're here, and I don't know why you're keeping me here. So I thought, all right, this isn't going well. So I took my bag, I took my laptop, walked out of the room, and I gave her about 20 minutes to kind of settle down. Now, again, this was my first meeting with her. And so I really wasn't sure how to approach her, but I knew a couple of things because the back office had made some calls. I knew, number one, I already knew that she didn't have a son named Brad. I did know that she had 2 daughters, and given her age, I knew that her parents couldn't possibly still be alive. So I exited the room, and this time, when I came back, I actually took my white coat off. I went out to my car and I grabbed a sweater that I had in there because I'm always chilly. So I grabbed my sweater and I grabbed my cell phone and I came walking in the room and I said, hey, Brad, yes, I'm here now. Let me check on her. Let me just make sure things are going okay. And how about if I call you back after the visit is complete? Okay. All right. Very well then. I'll talk to you soon. And I hung up my pretend phone call. What I noticed was as soon as I mentioned her son's name, she turned and she looked at me and she had a smile on her face. So already I knew I was in a better position, one where she looked at me as a friend rather than a foe. I had a couple of pieces of paper with some writing on it, really nothing pertinent to her, but I basically said, hey, I just wanted to let you know Brad sent me in. He had some questions that he wanted me to ask you. I'm going to give you these so you can follow along. Again, there was nothing pertinent written on there that would be for her, but this was all about what I needed to gather to do my assessment, to gather a good enough history, or at least her side of what her truth was. So she began asking me questions about Brad, and I made up some things that weren't necessarily true. And then she went on talking about her mother and her father and how she didn't really want to be in the assisted living that she was in and how she wanted to go home. So what I did was I decided that I would listen and validate her. And this is something that you can do with your loved one also. You might not want to lie to your loved one with dementia, but I can tell you that if you try to fight with them, if you try to argue with what's their reality, it's just going to cause frustration for you and for your loved one. And it's going to put you in a position where they're actually wondering if you're not the one who's not telling the truth. So listen and validate. When a person with dementia expresses something or they believe something that doesn't really align with what's real, just make sure that you're listening to what they're saying and that you validate them. So, for example, for her, I already knew that, her parents were not alive, but she wanted to go home. She wanted to get out of the building that she was in. So instead of saying, Mrs. Smith, you were 92 years old. Let's think about this logically. Could your parents still possibly be alive? I didn't say that at all. What I said instead was, wow, you must really miss them a lot if you're willing to leave this beautiful place and pack up and go home to see them. You must really miss them a lot. And her response was, I do really miss them a lot. And as she began talking, she started to realize that what she was saying wasn't necessarily the truth anymore. And her reality began to flip without me even having to point out the fact that she was aged and that there was no way that her parents could still be alive. Make sure that you're entering your person's reality. Remember, they have an organic brain disease, and that problem with their brain is telling them something that isn't necessarily the truth. But as opposed to arguing with them, as opposed to pointing out the obvious, your reality now becomes their reality. So understanding things from the level of their perception, what is their reality? Maybe sometimes if you use a little bit of redirection or affirming, that can often provide comfort to somebody when they're edgy. And if you feel that lying isn't a good thing to them, you can not necessarily lie, but maybe just sort of redirect them towards something else, or affirm to them, oh, I know you must miss your parents, or, oh my goodness, isn't the weather outside lovely? Or, oh, that's a lovely blanket. Did you stitch it? Did you crochet it? Redirecting them, but always making sure that you're providing comfort and reassurance and not necessarily correcting what's their version of reality. Excuse me. Make sure that you're empathizing with them. If they're heightened, like she was when I walked into the room with my white jacket on, my stethoscope, had my laptop in my bag, she was already on edge. She didn't recognize me. I was a stranger. I had, stethoscope around my neck and my white coat on. I usually don't do that when I go into visits. It just happened to be a little bit chillier out. So I threw my white coat on. I know when I see patients that usually will put them a little bit on edge. I'm much more comfortable. They're much more comfortable if I am not in my white jacket. And I make sure that I put myself at their eye level. I don't want to stand above them. I don't want to stand beside them. I'll either sit in a chair or sit on the floor, and I'll talk gentle with them. And I'll start with some very nonchalant questions. But just make sure that you're showing empathy and you're providing comfort to them by responding to their emotions, not your emotions. If you need a second, take yourself outside, walk away for a second, and take some breaths. But instead of focusing on what's factual or the accuracy of what they're saying, offer words of reassurance and support. This can often alleviate any distress that they might be going through. Lastly, if none of that works for you, try a distraction technique. If necessary, sometimes distraction techniques redirect them, draw their attention away from whatever it is that's distressing him or her, or any upsetting thoughts. I could have stayed in the room and I could have pushed the issue, and I could have said, well, your family sent me here. I'm your nurse practitioner. I'm going to take care of you. We're going to make sure that you're taken care of. But instead, I walked away, took off my white coat, pulled my hair out of the bun, and just acted like I was somebody that she knew well, acting like I was somebody that was familiar with Brad, who she was finding comfort with in the time. When I came into her room, she had lots of beautiful paintings on her walls, and I asked her, who did these paintings? And she said, I did. So I started to have her walk me through the room and talk to me about the paintings that were on the wall. As she began to talk about the paintings, it redirected her from the fact that I was there for a medical visit and that I was trying to assess where she was cognitively, emotionally, where her health was, because she had just come out of the hospital, and assess what things she might need, like physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, and such. So if you're at home and your loved one is, maybe let's say they're seeing people that are walking across the room, or when they go to bed at night, they see somebody sitting at the end of the bed. The first thing to find out, is it distressing to them? If that person is not distressing to them, or if what they're seeing or what they're thinking isn't distressing, just listen to what they have to say. You don't have to correct them. You don't have to tell them that there's nobody sitting at the end of the bed. You don't have to tell them that their parent isn't coming over, or if you're a child caring for your parent, say your mother, and she's waiting for her husband to come home, you don't have to correct her if that person is no longer alive. But what you need to do is offer some reassurance. Make sure that you're entering their level of reality and not yours. Make sure that you're being empathetic and comforting to them. And lastly, if none of those work, you can always use distraction. Have a go-to thing that you know will distract your person. That could be a favorite treat. That could be, a magazine. That could be something on the television. Grandkids can often, be a great distraction. Who doesn't love a little kid running around and climbing on your lap? Or a photo album, and start talking about that photo album. But lying necessarily isn't such a bad thing. I know, again, it can be controversial. People can question whether it's the right thing to do, but I'm here to tell you that it's okay to tell fibs to your person with dementia if they have an altered sense of reality. Remember, everybody is different. And so the realities that they have are going to be different. The emotions behind those realities are going to be different. And depending on what stage your person is, clearly you're not going to be lying to somebody in stage 1, but also their reality is going to be more closely aligned with yours. But as you start getting in those later stages, you're going to find that your loved one's reality isn't quite the same. So I hope that you found this useful. If you know somebody that can benefit, please share it with them. If you have any thoughts or feelings about telling your loved one with dementia a lie, or if you've had to tell them little white fibs, drop it in the comments below. We're here to support one another and be there for each other. Otherwise, I hope you have a great Easter weekend. I will see you next week. Take care.